I stood frozen near the entrance of the Grand Belmont Hotel ballroom, my hands trembling as I clutched the cream-colored invitation. 200 of the city's most elite guests turned to stare at me, their champagne flutes suspended mid-air, their conversations dying in their throats. Security. Security. The bride's voice cut through the string quartet like a knife. Who let her in? Get her out of my wedding. My face burned with shame. I'd known this was a mistake. I'd known I didn't belong here in my simple navy dress, the nicest thing I owned, surrounded by designer gowns and glittering jewelry worth more than I'd make in a lifetime. But the invitation had been so carefully worded, so hopeful, and I'd driven 60 miles just to catch a glimpse of my son. My son. The baby boy I'd held for 3 hours 27 years ago, before placing him in another woman's arms. Look at you, the bride sneered, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. She stormed toward me, her $15,000 wedding gown billowing behind her. Did you honestly think you could just walk into my wedding? What are you, some kind of delusional charity case? My lips parted, but no words came out. I took a step backward, tears already blurring my vision. Are you here to steal something? Her voice dripped with contempt. Or did you actually think someone like you belonged here? This is a 5-star venue, not a homeless shelter. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw several guests exchange uncomfortable glances, but no one intervened. No one spoke up for the strange woman in the cheap dress who clearly didn't belong. I shook my head, trying to explain, holding up the invitation with shaking hands. The bride slapped it away, and I watched it flutter to the marble floor. I don't care if you found that in the trash. You don't belong here. Look at you, that dress probably came from a thrift store. You're embarrassing yourself and ruining my perfect day. Each word landed like a physical blow. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. I wanted to disappear. I'd spent 27 years building a quiet, dignified life, helping others, trying to make peace with the hardest choice I'd ever made. And now I was being publicly humiliated by a woman who didn't even know me. Please, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to. To what? Crash my wedding? Steal something? Look around at all the nice things you'll never be able to afford. She laughed, a cruel sound that made several guests wince. This is a wedding for the Brooks and Ashcroft families. For people of quality. Not for random nobodies who wander in off the street. I heard footsteps approaching, security guards, their expressions uncomfortable as they responded to the bride's summons. This woman crashed my wedding, she announced loudly. I want her removed immediately. Ma'am, she has an invitation, one of the guards started. I don't care if she has an invitation. Look at her. Does she look like she belongs here? Remove her. Now. Before she embarrasses herself further or steals something. I stood there, my entire body shaking, as over 200 people watched my humiliation. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked away. But no one helped me. Then I heard a sound from across the room, something shattering. A champagne flute hitting marble. I looked up and saw him. A young man pushing through the crowd, his face pale, his eyes locked on mine with an expression of shocked recognition. He was tall and handsome in his tuxedo, with kind eyes that suddenly filled with tears. And I knew him. Even though we'd been separated for 27 years, even though he'd grown from an infant into a man, I knew him. My son. Mom. The word escaped his lips as barely a whisper. The bride froze mid-rant, her face going pale. What did you just say? But he wasn't listening to her. He was moving toward me, his legs seemingly on autopilot, his eyes never leaving my face. Mom, he said again, louder this time, his voice cracking. Mom, is it really you? I managed the smallest nod, tears streaming down my face. Nathaniel, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have come. I wanted to see you. Just once. And then my son, the baby I'd given up, the child I'd thought about every single day for 27 years, wrapped his arms around me and broke down sobbing. I held him, my hands shaking, my own sobs matching his, and for the first time in nearly 3 decades, I felt complete. Behind us, I heard the bride's strangled gasp. I saw her perfectly made-up face go from white to red to purple. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. She had no idea her entire world was about to crumble. And I had no idea that my act of walking into that ballroom would change everything. Hey friend, if you enjoy real gripping revenge stories, please subscribe. It's 1 second for you but a big deal for me. 3 months earlier, I thought I'd finally found peace with the choice I made 27 years ago. My name is Claire Whitmore, and I'm 54 years old. I've spent most of my adult life working as a librarian in the small town of Millbrook, about 60 miles from the city. It's quiet work, honest work, and it's allowed me to help hundreds of children discover the magic of books while carrying the weight of giving up my own child. I was 17 when I got pregnant. The boy, I hesitate to call him a man, disappeared the moment I told him. My parents, ashamed and angry, gave me 2 choices, abortion or adoption. I couldn't go through with the first, and I knew I couldn't give my baby the life he deserved. I was still a child myself. So I chose adoption. I chose to carry him for 9 months, to feel every kick and flutter, to whisper promises of love through my skin, and then to place him in the arms of 2 people who could give him everything I couldn't. Eleanor and Philip Brooks were everything I'd hoped for. I watched Eleanor cry as she held my son for the first time, watched her look at him like he hung the moon. I watched Philip promise to be the father my baby deserved. And even though it tore me apart, I knew I'd made the right choice. The adoption was semi-open. For the first 5 years, I received photos and updates. I watched my son, Nathaniel they named him, grow from a colicky infant into a bright-eyed toddler. Then Eleanor wrote me one last letter, asking if I'd prefer they stopped sending updates so I could move forward with my life. I said yes. It was the second hardest thing I ever did. For 27 years, I built a life. I finished college, got my library science degree, and found purpose in helping other people's children. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. How could I, when part of my heart would always belong to a little boy I'd held for only 3 hours? I convinced myself I was content. I had my books, my students, my small apartment with a garden where I grew tomatoes and herbs. I volunteered at the women's shelter, helping other young mothers navigate impossible choices. It was a good life. A quiet life. A life that was completely appended on a Tuesday afternoon in July, when I found a cream-colored envelope in my mailbox with no return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was an engraved wedding invitation. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Nathaniel James Brooks and Vivian Ashcroft Saturday, October 12th, the Grand Belmont Hotel. But it was the handwritten note tucked inside that made my knees weak. Ms. Whitmore. You don't know me, but I know who you are. I'm Nathaniel's best friend, Holden. He's talked about you his whole life, the brave woman who gave him life and then gave him a future. He carries your photo in his wallet. He wonders about you every day. I found you through some determined research, and maybe a few ethical boundaries crossed. Nate doesn't know I've invited you. I'm not sure if you'll come, or if you even should. But I thought you deserved the chance to see the incredible man your son became. If you decide to come, you don't have to make yourself known. Just see him. See that your sacrifice mattered. Holden Benedict. I must have read that note 50 times. I sat on my couch and cried until I had no tears left. Then I cried some more. For 3 months, I wrestled with the decision. Part of me wanted desperately to go, to catch even a glimpse of the boy I'd held so briefly. But another part, the part that had spent 27 years respecting the boundaries of his life, screamed that it would be selfish, intrusive, wrong. I called the women's shelter where I volunteered and spoke to Rosa, one of the counselors who become a dear friend. What does your heart tell you? Rosa asked gently. My heart is an unreliable narrator, I said with a weak laugh. It's been telling me impossible things for 27 years. Maybe it's time to listen to it then. Just this once. So I made my decision. I would go. I would stand in the back of the ceremony, watch my son marry the woman he loved, and then slip away. He'd never know I was there. I wouldn't disrupt his life. I would just see him. Just once. I bought a new dress, navy blue, the nicest thing I'd ever owned. I had my hair done at the small salon on Main Street. The stylist, Margot, asked if I was going somewhere special. A wedding, I said softly. The most important wedding I'll ever attend. The morning of October 12th, I woke before dawn. I barely ate. I changed clothes 3 times. Finally, I gathered my courage, grabbed the invitation, and drove the 60 miles to the city. The Grand Belmont Hotel was more intimidating in person than in pictures. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers visible through the windows, and a steady stream of luxury vehicles dropping off guests who looked like they'd walked off a fashion magazine cover. I almost turned around. I almost got back in my 14-year-old Honda and drove home. But I'd driven 60 miles. And I might never get another chance. So I parked in the public lot 2 blocks away, checked my reflection one last time in the rearview mirror, and walked toward the hotel on shaking legs. The ceremony was beautiful, so beautiful it hurt to watch. I'd slipped into a seat in the very back row, next to a kind-looking older woman in purple who smiled at me. I kept my eyes on the altar, trying to memorize every detail of this moment I'd never expected to witness. Nathaniel stood at the altar looking handsome and slightly nervous in his tuxedo. In the front row, I could see Eleanor and Philip Brooks, the couple who'd raised my son, who'd loved him when I couldn't. My heart swelled with gratitude toward them. When the bride glided down the aisle, I saw Nathaniel's face light up. He loved her. That was clear. And even though I didn't know anything about her, I hoped she would make him happy. That's all any mother wants, biological or otherwise. The vows were traditional but heartfelt. I dabbed at my eyes with a tissue, grateful that the woman next to me didn't seem to notice or mind my tears. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said. Except he didn't get to finish. Because that's when everything went wrong. The ceremony concluded, and guests began flowing toward the reception area. I knew I should leave. I'd seen what I came to see. But my feet wouldn't move. Just a few more minutes, I told myself. Just to see him smile at the reception, to watch him dance with his bride. Then I'd disappear like I'd never been there. I accepted a glass of sparkling water from a server. I couldn't risk anything that might cloud my judgment, and positioned myself near the back of the ballroom, trying to blend into the elegant wallpaper. The reception area was overwhelming. Hundreds of white roses and peonies created a fragrant canopy overhead. Crystal place settings caught the light from massive chandeliers. And everywhere, were people who belonged in this world of wealth and sophistication. People like Eleanor and Philip, who moved through the crowd with gracious ease. People unlike me, standing in my department store dress with my sensible shoes, feeling like an imposter who'd somehow snuck past security. That's when I felt eyes on me. I looked up and saw her, the bride, staring at me from across the room. Her expression shifted from curious to confused to something darker. Something contemptuous. My stomach dropped. I should have left when I had the chance. She excused herself from the group she'd been talking to and started walking toward me with purposeful strides. Several guests noticed and began following her progress across the room with interest. "Excuse me," she said sharply when she reached me. "Who are you?" My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry?" I asked who you are. "I don't recognize you, and I personally approved every name on the guest list." "I have an invitation," I said quietly, my hand shaking as I reached into my purse. "Oh really?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "An invitation? How convenient. And where did you get this alleged invitation? Find it in a trash can?" I felt nearby guests stop their conversations, their attention drawn to us. Heat flooded my face. "I was invited," I managed. "I shouldn't have come. I can leave." "You're damn right you shouldn't have come." Her voice rose, carrying across the ballroom. "Look at you. Look at that dress. Where did you get it? A thrift store. And those shoes, are those from Payless?" I heard gasps around us. People were staring now, openly watching my humiliation unfold. "I'm sorry," I whispered, taking a step backward. "I'll go." "Oh, you'll go all right. Security." She turned toward the entrance, gesturing frantically. "Security. We have a situation here." "Please," I whispered, tears already streaming down my face. "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to." "To what? Crash my wedding? Steal something? Look around at all the nice things you'll never be able to afford." She laughed cruelly. "This is a wedding for the Brooks and Ashcroft families. For people of quality. Not for random nobodies who wander in off the street." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to die right there on the spot. Every eye in that ballroom was on me, 200 wealthy, sophisticated people watching this woman tear me apart. 2 security guards approached, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "This woman crashed my wedding," the bride announced loudly. "I want her removed immediately." "Ma'am, she has an invitation," one of the guards started. "I don't care if she has an invitation. Look at her. Does she look like she belongs here? Remove her. Now. Before she embarrasses herself further or steals something." I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but stand there and absorb her cruelty while hundreds of strangers watched. A woman in an elegant suit pushed through the crowd, the wedding planner, I assumed. "Ms. Ashcroft, perhaps we could handle this more privately." "There's nothing private about a wedding crasher," the bride snapped. "I want everyone to see what happens when people try to infiltrate spaces where they don't belong. Maybe it'll discourage the next person who thinks they can pretend to be something they're not." That's when I heard it, the sound of breaking glass from across the room. And then a voice, shocked and disbelieving, "Mom." Time seemed to stop. I looked up through my tears and saw him, Nathaniel, pushing through the crowd, his face pale, his eyes locked on mine with an expression I couldn't quite read. Recognition? Confusion? Hope? The bride spun around, her triumphant expression faltering. "Nathaniel, thank God. I was just having security remove this wedding crasher." But he wasn't listening to her. He was staring at me like I was a ghost, like I was something impossible and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "Is it you?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Are you really her?" I couldn't speak. I could only nod, tears streaming down my face, my entire body trembling. And then this man, this stranger who was my son, this wealthy, sophisticated man who I'd only held for 3 hours, crossed the distance between us and pulled me into his arms. He broke down completely. His whole body shook with sobs as he held me, and I held him back, my hands clutching the back of his tuxedo jacket like he might disappear if I let go. "You came," he choked out. "You actually came. I've waited my whole life. I've wondered. Mom. Oh God, Mom." I couldn't speak. I could only hold him and cry and marvel at this impossible moment that I'd never dared to dream about. The ballroom erupted in whispers. I saw phones appear, people recording, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered except this moment with my son. "Nathaniel," the bride said, her voice shaking now. "I didn't know. How could I have known?" He pulled back from me just enough to look at his bride, and the expression on his face made her take a step backward. "You didn't need to know," he said quietly, his voice cold in a way that made me shiver. "She was a guest at our wedding. She had an invitation. But even if she hadn't, even if she had just wandered in off the street, what you did was cruel and unforgivable. But darling, don't." His voice sharpened. "Don't you dare try to explain this away. I've spent 3 months watching you treat people like garbage. The florist, the caterer, the hotel staff. I told myself it was stress. I made excuses for you. But this." He looked at me, his eyes filling with fresh tears. "This is who you really are." I wanted to disappear for an entirely different reason now. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I hadn't come here to ruin his wedding or destroy his happiness. "Nathaniel," I said softly, finding my voice. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have come. This is your day, and I've ruined it." "You didn't ruin anything," he said fiercely, taking my hands in his. "You gave me the greatest gift by coming here. But he glanced at his bride, she showed me exactly who she is when she thinks no one important is watching." A woman's voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "Claire? Is that really you?" I looked up to see an elegant woman in her 60s approaching, Eleanor Brooks, the woman who'd raised my son. My heart clenched with a mixture of gratitude and fear. Would she hate me for showing up? For disrupting this moment? But when Eleanor reached us, her hand flew to her mouth, and tears filled her eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Claire." And then she did something I never expected. She opened her arms and pulled me into a fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered into my ear, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Thank you for trusting me with your son. Thank you for this incredible young man we've had the honor to raise." I broke down completely then, sobbing into this woman's shoulder, this woman who had every right to resent me but instead was thanking me. A man joined us, Philip Brooks, tall and distinguished, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "We've hoped to meet you for 27 years, he said softly. "We just never imagined it would be like this." I looked around at the faces surrounding me, Nathaniel, Eleanor, Philip, and further back, a young man with kind eyes who gave me a small smile. Holden, I assumed. The friend who'd sent the invitation. And standing alone in her designer wedding gown, the bride watched her perfect day disintegrate around her. "Nathaniel, please," she tried again, her voice desperate now. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can we just—" "No," he said firmly, turning to face her fully. "We can't just anything. This wedding is over, Vivian. We're over." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. "You can't be serious," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "You can't call off our wedding because of one misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding." Nathaniel's voice rose, carrying to every corner of the room. "You deliberately humiliated someone you thought was beneath you. You judged her by her clothes and her shoes and decided she wasn't good enough to breathe the same air as you. That's not a misunderstanding, Vivian. That's who you are." The wedding planner stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but there will be no reception this evening. The Brooks family requests privacy during this time. Thank you for your understanding." But hardly anyone was leaving. This was too dramatic, too shocking, too unprecedented to walk away from. I felt overwhelmed by it all, the attention, the phone's recording, the whispers. "I should go," I said quietly to Eleanor. "I've caused enough trouble." "You're not going anywhere," Eleanor said firmly, linking her arm through mine. "We have 27 years to catch up on. We have a family dinner planned for tomorrow night. Will you come? Please? We've spent all these years wondering about you, hoping you were happy. We'd love to hear your story." I looked at Nathaniel, who nodded eagerly, his eyes still red from crying. "I'd be honored," I whispered. As the Brooks family, with me included impossibly, made our way toward the exit, I glanced back once. The bride stood alone in her $15,000 gown, surrounded by $200,000 worth of decorations for a wedding that would never happen. I should have felt satisfaction. But all I felt was sadness for everyone involved, and overwhelming gratitude for the son who'd chosen me. The video started trending on social media that night. I didn't know about it at first. I was too busy sitting in the Brooks family's kitchen, drinking tea with Eleanor while Nathaniel and Philip brought in Chinese takeout. We'd all been too emotionally exhausted for the fancy family dinner Eleanor had planned, so we settled for something simple and honest instead. But by Sunday morning my phone, which rarely rang, started buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. "Don't answer," Holden advised when he stopped by to check on us. He'd become my unexpected ally in all of this. "The video from yesterday is everywhere. You're kind of famous." "What video?" I asked, confused. He pulled out his phone and showed me. Someone had captured the entire scene: Vivian's cruel insults, my tears, Nathaniel's recognition, the emotional reunion. It had been viewed over 40 million times. The comments were overwhelming. Imagine being so cruel to someone's mother at their wedding. The way she mocked that woman's clothes, absolutely disgusting. That groom's face when he realized what his fiancée did, that's real love. Eleanor Brooks hugging Claire made me cry. That's what class looks like. I felt sick. Everyone's watching this? Everyone saw me get humiliated. "Everyone saw you maintain your dignity in the face of cruelty," Eleanor corrected gently. "And everyone saw a beautiful family reunion. Don't let Vivian's 15 minutes of shame make you feel bad about this moment." But I did feel bad. Not for myself, for Nathaniel, whose wedding I'd inadvertently destroyed. For Eleanor and Philip, whose carefully planned celebration had turned into a spectacle. "Mom," Nathaniel said, and my heart still fluttered every time he called me that, "stop apologizing. You didn't do anything wrong. Vivian revealed who she really is, and I'm grateful I found out before I married her." Over the next few days, more stories emerged. The florist spoke to a news station about being fired twice. The caterer described being screamed at over meat temperature. The wedding planner gave a carefully worded interview about Vivian's pattern of treating vendors and staff with consistent cruelty. Hotel employees came forward anonymously, sharing stories of Vivian demanding staff be fired for trivial reasons, berating servers, making racist comments about the valets. Each new revelation made me feel worse. Yes, Vivian had been cruel to me. But this was her entire life being destroyed, her reputation shredded, her future ruined. She made her choices, Rosa said when she called me from the shelter. The same way you made yours 27 years ago. You chose love and sacrifice. She chose cruelty and status. Both of you are living with the consequences. The media attention was overwhelming. Reporters showed up at my apartment in Millbrook. My library had to issue a statement asking people to respect my privacy. The women's shelter where I volunteered got calls from journalists wanting interviews. Through it all, the Brooks were my anchor. Eleanor invited me to stay in their guest house until the attention dies down. Nathaniel called me every day, sometimes multiple times, as if making up for 27 years of missed conversations. Philip quietly hired security to keep reporters away from both me and the Brooks estate. 2 weeks after the wedding, Nathaniel's lawyer delivered a formal letter to Vivian, terminating their engagement and demanding the return of gifts, including the $127,000 engagement ring. She's going to lose everything, I said quietly when Nathaniel told me. Her apartment, her car, her social standing. Isn't that enough? Mom, she tried to have you thrown out like garbage, Nathaniel said gently. And the evidence shows she's treated dozens of people the same way. This isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. But I couldn't help feeling responsible somehow. If I hadn't come to that wedding, Vivian would be married now, living her dream life. If you hadn't come to that wedding, Eleanor corrected when I voiced this thought, Nathaniel would be married to someone who only loved his money. Someone who would have made him miserable for years before he finally saw through her facade. You didn't ruin his life, Claire. You saved it. I wanted to believe her. 3 weeks after the wedding, I finally worked up the courage to check the messages on my old voicemail. Most were from reporters, but one caught my attention. Ms. Whitmore, this is Vivian Ashcroft. I'd like to meet with you. To apologize properly. To explain. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but, please. I told Nathaniel about the message. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to forgive her and move on. But another part thinks that meeting with her would just give her another chance to manipulate or hurt me. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, Eleanor said wisely. You can forgive her for your own peace without inviting her back into our lives. In the end, I decided not to call her back. I forgave Vivian, truly forgave her, because carrying anger and resentment wasn't who I wanted to be. But I also recognized that I didn't owe her a relationship or even a conversation. She'd made her choices. Now she had to live with them. As the weeks turned into months, something beautiful began to emerge from the chaos. Nathaniel and I built a relationship, tentative at first, then stronger. We had lunch every week, long phone conversations about everything and nothing, lazy Sunday afternoons where I taught him to bake my grandmother's recipes while he told me about his childhood. Eleanor and I became friends, genuine friends, bonding over our shared love for the man we'd both raised in different ways. She taught me about art and opera. I taught her about medicinal herbs and library science. We laughed about the absurdity of how we'd met and cried over the years we'd missed. Philip became my unlikely protector, using his wealth and connections to shield me from media attention while helping me navigate this new world I'd been thrust into. And slowly I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved this happiness. 4 months after the wedding, Nathaniel came to me with an idea. I want to start a foundation, he said over Sunday dinner at the Brooks estate. To help women in situations like you were in, facing impossible choices about pregnancy and parenting. The Aurora Foundation, I want to call it. After your middle name. I stared at him, overwhelmed. Nathaniel, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. You spent your whole adult life helping other women navigate these choices. Let me help you do it on a bigger scale. Let's turn what happened, all the attention, all the publicity, into something meaningful. What do you think? Eleanor asked, watching me with gentle eyes. I think. I paused, emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I think it's the most beautiful idea I've ever heard. The Aurora Foundation launched 3 months later with a mission, to provide resources, support, and non-judgmental assistance to women facing unplanned pregnancies, whether they chose adoption, parenting, or any other path. We offered counseling, medical care, legal support, and financial assistance. We partnered with the women's shelter where I'd volunteered. We hired staff who understood that dignity and respect should be offered to everyone, regardless of their economic status or circumstances. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, some from people who'd seen the wedding video and wanted to support me, others from families touched by adoption, still others from people who'd experienced classism and wanted to fight against it. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I stood in our newly opened counseling center, watching young women walk through the doors seeking help, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: purpose combined with peace. Nathaniel worked tirelessly on the foundation, channeling his heartbreak over Vivian into something productive. Eleanor and Philip provided funding and guidance. Holden used his connections to drum up support. And me? I did what I'd always done. I listened to women tell their stories, held their hands through impossible decisions, and reminded them that they were worthy of dignity regardless of what anyone else said. One afternoon, a young woman came in, maybe 19 years old, pregnant and terrified. "I saw your video," she said quietly. "The one from the wedding. The way that woman treated you, my boyfriend's mother treats me the same way. She says I'm not good enough for her son. She says if I keep this baby, I'll ruin his future. What do you want?" I asked gently. "I don't know," she whispered. "I just know that if I can be as strong as you were, standing there with dignity while she tore you apart, maybe I can make whatever choice is right for me without letting anyone else tell me I'm not good enough." I pulled her into a hug and shared my story, not the viral video version, but the real story of a 17-year-old girl who made an impossible choice out of love. "Whatever you decide," I told her, "you deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve dignity. And you deserve support from people who see your worth, not people who try to diminish it." That's what the Aurora Foundation became, a place where women could find dignity in impossible circumstances. And slowly, the narrative around the viral video began to shift. It wasn't just about a cruel bride and a dramatic wedding anymore. It became a conversation about classism, about how we treat people we perceive as less than, about the importance of dignity and respect regardless of someone's clothes or economic status. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual connections that Vivian had left the city, moved out of state, was trying to start over somewhere people didn't know her story. I hoped she found peace. I hoped she learned to treat people better. But that was her journey to make, not mine. My journey was here, with the son I'd found again, the family I'd been welcomed into, and the women I could help because of my own impossible choice all those years ago. The Grand Belmont Hotel ballroom looked completely different than it had a year ago. Instead of white roses and peonies, purple and gold decorations filled the space, the Aurora Foundation's colors. Instead of guests in designer gowns judging each other's wealth, 200 people gathered to celebrate helping women and children in need. I stood at the podium in a simple purple dress, a gift from Eleanor, who'd insisted I needed something special for the Foundation's first annual gala. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "A year ago, I walked into this room for the first time. I was terrified. I didn't belong here, or at least, I didn't think I did." I paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Some I knew, many I didn't, all of them here because they believed in dignity and respect. Someone made sure I knew I didn't belong. She judged me by my clothes, my shoes, my appearance. She tried to have me removed because I didn't meet her standards of what deserving looked like. The audience was silent, listening intently. But she was wrong. Not just about me, about what determines a person's worth. I've spent my adult life working with women in crisis, women making impossible choices about their futures. And I've learned that dignity isn't determined by how much money you have. It's determined by how you treat others, especially when you think no one important is watching. Applause rippled through the room. The Aurora Foundation exists to help women who are where I was at 17, scared, pregnant, facing a choice that will change their lives forever. We provide resources for women who choose adoption and for women who choose to parent. We offer support without judgment. Because every woman deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of what her dress looks like or where her shoes came from. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. I saw Nathaniel in the front row, tears streaming down his face, Eleanor and Philip on either side of him, all three beaming with pride. Nathaniel joined me on stage, placing his arm around my shoulders. My mother made an impossible choice 27 years ago, he said into the microphone. She gave me life, and then she gave me a future. And a year ago she gave me something else, the courage to choose character over appearance, love over status, and family over everything else. He looked out at the crowd. The Aurora Foundation has already helped over 300 women in its first year. We've provided counseling, medical care, legal support, and financial assistance. We've helped women keep their babies and helped women place their babies for adoption. And we've done it all with one guiding principle: treat everyone with dignity. Eleanor joined us on stage, followed by Philip and Holden. We have exciting news, Eleanor announced. Thanks to your incredible generosity, the Aurora Foundation has received enough funding to open 3 new counseling centers across the state. We're expanding our services to include job training, childcare assistance, and education programs. The crowd erupted in cheers. After the speeches, I mingled with guests, sharing stories, thanking donors, listening to people tell me about their own adoption experiences. The wedding planner from a year ago, Miranda, approached with a warm smile. "This is beautiful," she said. "Everything that other events should have been: elegant, meaningful, focused on what actually matters." "Thank you for all your work on this," I said sincerely. "Thank you for letting me be part of something good." She paused. "I heard Vivian tried to call you." "She did," I confirmed. "Last month. Left a voicemail asking to meet." "Did you?" "No." Nathaniel and I talked about it, and we decided that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I forgave her for my own peace, but that doesn't mean I need to invite her back into our lives. "That's wise," Miranda said. "I heard she moved to another state. Trying to start over." "I hope she finds peace," I said, and I meant it. "I hope she learns to treat people better. But that's her journey, not mine." As the evening wound down, I found myself standing in the exact spot where Vivian had tried to have me removed 1 year earlier. "Are you okay?" Nathaniel asked, appearing at my side. "I'm perfect," I said honestly. "A year ago, I stood in this room and let someone make me feel worthless. Tonight, I stood on that stage and helped raise $3 million to help women in need. It's amazing how things change." "You changed them," he said. "Your grace, your dignity, your refusal to retaliate, that's what made this possible." We looked around the ballroom at the people still mingling, still writing checks, still wanting to be part of something meaningful. "Thank you," I said softly. "For what?" "For finding me. For accepting me. For giving me this chance to be your mother, even if it's 27 years late." "You were always my mother," Nathaniel said, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. "We just had to wait a little while to be together." Eleanor and Philip approached, both smiling. "Ready to head home?" Eleanor asked. "I made that apple pie recipe you taught me, and I think I finally got it right." Home. For so many years, home had been a lonely apartment and a small garden and the library where I worked. Now home was this family, biological and chosen, complicated and beautiful, exactly what I'd dreamed about for 27 years. "Let's go home," I agreed. As we left the Grand Belmont Hotel, I glanced back one last time at the ballroom where my life had changed forever. Vivian had tried to destroy me with her cruelty, but instead, she'd given me the greatest gift: a reunion with my son, acceptance into a loving family, and a purpose bigger than myself. Sometimes karma doesn't just come around. Sometimes it comes around and brings everything you've ever wanted with it. And sometimes the person who tries to make you feel small ends up showing you just how strong you really are. I'd spent 27 years thinking I'd given up the most important thing in my life. But standing there with my son's arm around me, surrounded by family and purpose, I realized the truth: I hadn't given him up. I'd given him a future. And somehow, impossibly beautifully, that future had circled back to include me. "I love you, Mom," Nathaniel said as we walked to the car. "I love you too," I whispered back. "I always have. I always will." And for the first time in 27 years, my heart felt completely whole. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next powerful tale. What would you have done in my situation? Have you witnessed similar behavior? Share your thoughts in the comments below.